Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Sanibel Captiva Guide. Today we have a very special guest. I'd like Tony. Could you introduce? Well, we got Tony Westland from J. Ending Darling National Wildlife Refuge, and we have another guest alongside, a little past his time, but
he's looking good.
He's looking good for his age.
Well preserved.
Yes.
Well preserved. So just to put everything in perspective, we do have Theodore Roosevelt here, and we have a function this afternoon. So by the time this comes out, this will actually have already happened. But it's the annual fundraiser for the J. Ending Darling National Wildlife Refuge, which is held by the Friends of the J. Ending Darling National Wildlife Refuge
Society. Yes.
Society.
Yeah.
I knew I'd have to
So
get
many
one
names.
wrong.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the event and what we got going on today.
Yes, we're so excited. It's our annual Go Wild, and that is the Ding Darling Wildlife Society, the best friends group in the nation for the
Absolutely.
U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for Ding Darling. And they always bring a new flair every year, so it's great to attend. And this year, we've got Go Bully. We have Teddy Roosevelt, the best president of all time, for conservation, visiting us, and we're excited. Here he is.
Yes.
Teddy.
Welcome, Teddy.
Welcome, Teddy.
Yes. How old
I'm
are you, Teddy?
delighted to be with you
We are
here
delighted.
in Fort Myers,
Yes.
so nearby to Sanibel, which is, of course, where the vast majority of Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge is located. However, your listeners, your viewers might be interested to know that I declared the first 51 bird sanctuaries. These are now regarded as the first 51 national wildlife refuges. And in 1908, I declared Matlacha, Island Bay, and Pine Island as bird sanctuaries. They are now constituent portions of J.N. Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge. Mr. Adams, I appreciate your reminding us that it's J.N. Those are the initials for J. Norwood Darling, who would sign his cartoons Ding, for short.
Yes,
Correct.
absolutely.
And you enjoy visiting this area, don't you, Teddy?
I enjoy visiting it now because it's such a wonderful vacation place, a place where people live year-round. And I enjoy visiting it because it's probably one of the most wonderful examples of having a refuge and having conservation where you also have development and people living. But what a balance
Yes.
on Sanibel and Captiva. And you might know that I enjoyed visiting Captiva in 1917.
Amazing.
I'm known as a great hunter. Now that means the big game of North America, the big game of Africa. I hunted in British East Africa in 1909 and 1910. But in 1917, I accepted an invitation by J. Russell Coles of Danville, Virginia. He was an ichthyologist, a man who studied the big fishes. We had corresponded previously. He invited me to come down to hunt manta ray, the devilfish, with harpoons off of small little speedboats. It was an amazing adventure. I was reluctant to come. The issues in Europe, the open warfare on the Atlantic by the German U-boats, was much on the mind of the American people. But Mr. Coles assured me that if I came by train to Punta Gorda, within hours of my arrival, we would be harvesting our first manta ray. And he was accurate just about to the minute. We camped for several days and nights aboard a camping fishing boat in the channel that is now called Roosevelt Channel, that bears my
That's
name.
correct.
And that's the origin of the naming of Roosevelt Channel.
Which is right behind
Between Captiva and Bucky.
Bucky.
Yeah,
right
that's
behind.
so cool.
Yeah.
Blind Man's Pass, as they call it. Is it a Boca?
Blind pass.
Blind
Yes.
Pass. How do we
Yes.
say it in the Spanish? Boca Fuego?
Sounds good.
All right, I'm off.
Yeah, we'll go with
I'm
that.
off the trails. I'm off the rails. But of course, we're here in great part to celebrate the work being done by the Ding Darling Wildlife Society. As Ranger Westland mentioned, that's the Friends organization, and she boasts properly. It's not boasting if it's true. The best Friends organization across the country in the Fish and Wildlife Service.
Here, here.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
agree. They've done
absolutely.
amazing things for the refuge, for the island, for this whole area. So
Yep.
And for those of
Applause
you
to
that
them.
aren't aware, they basically fill up the shortfall of government funding, and it's basically put in the hands of public money with with donations and things like
Because I
that.
believe,
that-
Tony, there is restrictions being a government agency of what you can do, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
What you can buy, contracting. The creativity sometimes isn't as broad when you work for the government.
Right.
And so they allow us to do some great things. And people know when they give money to the society, it's going to be properly used. It's going to be creative. It's going to be, using different monies to leverage each other to do even more for conservation. So they're amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I may, I saw this in action today here in the schools of Lee County at Tice Elementary School, a school that by any measure one might consider challenged. And in that school, the Ding Darling Wildlife Society is able to have a community outreach coordinator who brings the Wildlife Society into the school and connects the Wildlife Society with members of the local community. That young lady is in from Puerto Rico and doing wonderful work. And then just shortly after, we were at Oak Hammock Middle School, and there the Wildlife on Wheels classroom,
The wow.
mobile classroom, the wow. And that was my reaction to seeing
Yes.
the volunteers and staff interacting with young science students in the middle school on wonderful issues with regards to habitat and food production in the ocean, in the mangroves. And, that
And
sort
were
of
they
thing.
excited to meet President Roosevelt?
I think they were rather underwhelmed.
It's middle schoolers.
Right.
The
Exactly.
elementary, the first and second graders are hanging all over the president,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And then you go to middle school and they're not quite knowing who
Who
this
this
is.
even
and,
though they should know from their history
That's
lessons,
right.
I think.
So tell us a little bit about the event we got going on today.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be fun. It's almost like putting a wedding together, right? It's this big event, but it's great because it brings people that love and support and to thank them and to all be together. And that's what we need right now.
Right.
We
So
all
tell-
need that.
Right. We do need that because obviously, if you
Yes.
don't know out there, we did have a major hurricane here,
Right.
Hurricane Ian, and it has devastated this area. And Ding Darling, tell us what effect did the hurricane have on the refuge, Tony?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm proud to say we are going to be open soon.
No.
I do not have a
Can you
date.
date?
You heard it
Oh.
here.
You
You heard it
tease.
here.
You tease.
I tease, but it's true. And I usually that's the $1 million question. When are you
Yes.
going to open? And I turn and I say, well, when we'll be open by Earth Day. When's Earth Day? And there's silence. So we will be open, I promise,
All
by
right.
April 22nd. That's Earth Day.
We're
Earth
holding
Day is
you
every
to
day,
this.
but we will be open by then. And I hope to exceed. We will proudly exceed that goal
Okay.
to get the Wildlife Drive open and the Indigo Trail. Now, I need to let everybody know. I mean, this is like a big announcement.
Yes, it is.
There will be things that aren't going to look the same. Obviously, we know everything has changed, but the mangrove overlook will be closed. The Clusha-Shalmon Trail. I mean, a lot of our boardwalks, the beginning of the Indigo Trail is devastated.
Yeah.
Things have to be rebuilt. We're looking at different products to be more sustainable. I was here for Charlie. This is a way different storm, but we're kind of repeating ourselves on some of the things that are happening in which we need to really be sustainable and
for the future.
yeah, it's important. So
And what were the actual effects? Was the Wildlife Drive washed away in portions?
yes, so the Wildlife Drive, in many portions, the water just undercut the road. I mean, I'm 5 feet tall, not very tall, but I could stand in these holes
The gullies.
alongside of the road. And it's directly related to the mangroves. Where the mangroves were cut, or we cut our own mangroves so you can see into the water, of course, and see the wildlife. In those areas, that's where, you didn't have as much protection.
Mm-hmm.
The mangroves really did their job on Sanibel and Captiva, holding us in place, the wildlife and everything else. But where that didn't happen, we see where the water definitely naturally wanted to come. The Indigo Trail, big, huge holes. Huge shout out to volunteers. 20 volunteers every Wednesday at the Refuge since December. People, we give them a bucket and a grabber, and there's there's nothing too small to pick up. Insulation, glass, all of that stuff affects the wildlife and when we can reopen.
Yeah.
People have been so great about just helping because we have heavy equipment to fill in the road and get things ready. It's
But the
even
little
the little
pieces-
things. There's no trash too small.
No. And then the things that get stuck in the mangroves. I mean, you
Yes.
literally have to hand pick that stuff
Yes.
off the trees.
I know we've seen from Max and I've been doing drone work, and you can see from the air that this doesn't just go as far as the eye sees; it goes it goes hundreds of feet back into the
Yes.
undergrowth, so it's
Right.
all got to be pulled out.
I need to know, are the scat trails still there?
The scat trail's there. The web is there. The Sanibel School went back a couple weeks ago, and we want to open that up. It's not ready yet for them. We have to make sure all of these platforms, we did lose a birding platform, was 200 yards across Wildlife Drive into the mangroves. So we lost structures. The tower is standing. The web is standing. Our buildings are standing. Unfortunately, who we're honoring, who's doing the event tonight, they've lost everything. They lost
Yes,
all of the Ding Darling Wildlife Society, lost all of their office space, all of their auction items, just their livelihood. Everything below is just, there was 6 feet of water downstairs. So we had to bulldoze and clean that out in order to save our building above it. The visitor center is standing, so that's great. And we have temporary AC units in there. We'll be awaiting government contracts, but we at least have temporary stuff in there so we can keep the exhibits alive.
Right, and the world's best bathrooms are still standing
yes,
as well.
Yes.
So it's all good.
You'll have a place to go. Yes.
That's not just conjecture. That's certified.
Yes.
They are award-winning
Yes.
bathrooms.
Yes.
That's true. Nick
Full of
actually-
nature and
yes,
wildlife.
Nick got to photograph the award-winning bathrooms.
Yes,
One of
I'm
his
honoured.
best-
Walking into the ladies' bathroom with a camera, the most popular man in the planet.
Exactly. So I do have a question. So
Yes.
tonight's event is called Go Bully. What does that mean exactly, Mr. Roosevelt? President Roosevelt.
The phrase bully had many meanings, as many words in the English language did. And Mr. Adams, you'll appreciate what Prime Minister Churchill reminded us, that we are indeed two people divided by a common language. There are different uses of words depending upon what part of the English Commonwealth you're from. The phrase bully is a bit of an Anglophile word. I'll put it into context. One senator came to the White House and bristled at my moralizing. He said, "Mr. President, you're preaching." I said, "Senator, you're right. And the presidency is a bully pulpit, too." It means it's a great pulpit, a wonderful pulpit. And it did still have the second and pejorative meaning, a schoolyard bully or that sort of thing. This has put me in a conundrum sometimes. I visit the elementary schools. They have signs up that say, no bullying. It takes away a significant portion of my vocabulary.
Yes, that's true.
And tonight, a Bully for Ding is indeed an evening of entertainment, a dinner show at the Broadway Palm Dinner Theater in Fort Myers. I've enjoyed attending programs there previously, and hopefully there will be equal parts inspiration and humor. It was my daughter Alice that said to me famously, Ranger Westland mentioned it was like getting ready for a wedding. Well, it was my daughter Alice that said of me famously, "Father wanted to be the bride at every wedding, the corpse at every funeral, and the baby at every christening." I look forward to being all three this evening on behalf of the Ding Darling Wildlife Society.
So I understand you'll be doing a little presentation there.
Most definitely so. In the genre of one-person living history, very similar to Hal Holbrook bringing Mark Twain to life. The American people, we love the writings of Samuel Clemens, but when we think of Mark Twain, flesh and bone, I think we're actually thinking of the interpretation that we know that Hal Holbrook did on stage and television. Now, of course, I am the real Theodore Roosevelt.
Yes.
Tony Westland mentioned having heavy equipment. They dug me up at Young Cemetery in Long Island for this show. I've dusted the dirt off of my britches. But you realize when I left the White House in 1909, I was but 50 years old. Oh, wow. Very young. The youngest president in American history upon becoming president, 42 years and 11 months. Not the youngest elected. That's President Kennedy. I came to the presidency through the graveyard upon the sad assassination of President McKinley in Buffalo, New York. But when I left the White House, there was no presidential pension. That came into law in the United States in 1953, when Congress discovered that President and Mrs. Truman were spending their meager savings, purchasing letterhead, envelopes, and stamps to reply to the thousands of congratulatory letters they were receiving. So I had to earn a living. I edited the Outlook magazine. I wrote newspaper articles that were syndicated. And I made speeches in exchange for remuneration. I've never made Clinton money, but I'm doing all right. And so I'll be singing for my supper tonight. I'm making a speech in exchange for remuneration and for a good cause as well.
Absolutely.
And as a highlight of this evening's performance, I'll tell the story of how the teddy bear got its name. Briefly, in 1902 on a bear hunt in Mississippi, I refused to shoot an adult male bear that had been wounded and tied to a tree. Imagine the horror of having some of my hunting party say, "Mr. President, there's your bear. Go ahead and shoot your bear." I founded Boone and Crockett, the nation's first fair hunting and conservation organization, over a century before. And so, a century ago, about a decade and a half prior to this hunt, I refused to shoot the bear. The story spread throughout the country by telegram and newspaper. The cartoonist Clifford Berryman drew a cartoon of the incident, called it "Drawing the Line in Mississippi." Toy manufacturers from Brooklyn, New York, wrote me at the White House asking permission as a result to make a stuffed bear and to name it after me. I wrote back. I said, "You may go ahead and do so, but I don't think it will help your sales very much at all." Apparently, sales of what they called Teddy's Bear were pretty good because they became the ideal toy company of New York City, New York, one of the largest toy companies in the world. And so tonight I'll tell that story, and I'll have a teddy bear that, with the assistance of Ms. Pierce, one of the new board members for Ding Darling Society, we're going to auction that teddy bear along with a day and a night of evening performances by yours truly anywhere in the world, anywhere in the country.
Wow.
At no additional cost to the winning bidder. And that can be done for your grandchildren's school in New England, or for a family or a corporate event in California, or just donate it back to the community here.
Oh, how cool.
Fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Fantastic.
I can't wait to see who wins.
Well, it
That's
beats
amazing.
working.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well,
Wow.
exciting news. I'm looking forward to the event. Max and I are both going to be working tonight. We're photographing the guests, and we'll be watching the show intently. So,
Mr. Adams, did they share with you my little contract rider about photographs?
No, please
Just
do.
my simple request that in what you call post, it would just make sure that you stretch me out to be a little taller and thinner.
Well, absolutely. We can
Ranger
stretch.
Westland will take that taller part too.
Yes,
right?
please. Thanks. Thanks, Teddy.
We actually have a negative stretcher.
Yeah,
we will
we're
be
using
going back
period
to
technology.
Film process tonight.
We're using period technology.
Film
No
stretcher.
Photoshop.
A
Yeah.
film stretcher.
You might have seen out on the internet, my friends would send me these pictures that they'd discovered, and they'd say, "Look at that Theodore Roosevelt. Look at what sort of man he is. He's riding a moose across a lake." You might have seen these pictures. It's me in my cowboy garb atop a moose, riding across a moose on the lake, a bull moose. Well, of course, they had Photoshop then. It was called a darkroom. In the 1912 campaign, one newspaper published a triptych of photographs, each party's nominee riding the animal associated with that party. So it was Taft aboard an elephant, Wilson aboard a donkey, and me aboard a bull moose. But I'm concerned about how gullible my friends are to believe that a wild bull moose would allow a fat man to ride across his back across a New England lake.
We'll have to pull that picture up and show it on the podcast, because I would definitely like to see that.
If you Google Teddy Roosevelt
come
riding
up.
a bull moose,
Right.
that will come
And
up.
there are actual pictures of you catching the manta rays here on Sanibel that are in the archives. So those are and they used to call them devil rays, which
Yeah.
we don't use that term anymore.
Right.
I don't think.
Devilfish.
Oh, devilfish.
Devilfish
Is that
and
what
a
it
manta
was?
ray.
Yes.
And I published an article, I want to say, it'll come, Scribner's. Scribner's, I used to publish some of my hunting articles. Now, this is important too. We declared war against Germany 2 weeks hence in 1917. I died, spoiler alert, I died January 6, 1919, Epiphany Day. That hunt off the coast of Captiva was my last hunt. Because when war started, if you did not need to hunt or fish to put food on the table, it was recreation. And I would not be recreating during a time when we were at war. I indeed offered to go and fight in Europe. My friends in Congress passed a resolution stating that I should be allowed to raise a division of cavalry and lead them across the fields of France into the German machine guns. And come to think of it, perhaps it weren't just my friends that voted in the affirmative. But President Wilson denied me the opportunity to serve. He said we have professional soldiers to do that sort of thing. Now, of course, four of my boys went and fought, and Kermit, in both wars, joined the British forces early to get into the war early, fought in Mesopotamia during the First World War. And my daughter and my daughter-in-law both rushed to Paris to be Red Cross nurses before Congress passed a law that prohibited officers' wives from going to the front.
Wow.
So many. Yeah, we could talk for ages about all that. And I know there was a school on the island on Captiva called the Snyder School for Boys. I think you actually...
The boys came out and swam out to the boat.
Yes.
For a bit of a lesson from the old president on the boat, and were known to come and sort of track along our adventures once we were in port.
Yeah, very cool.
A Chicago-based school, if I recall.
Yes, that's right.
Chicago in the summertime and fall, spring, and then down here in the winter.
Yeah. Right. What a great...
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Well, it's going to be fun tonight.
Yeah.
Any other news, Tony? Anything else we got going on?
We're just
Gosh,
we're
wasn't
holding
that
you
enough
to the
news?
We're heard about. Yes, obviously,
it's exciting.
everybody has been dying.
We've
to
been
find
asked
out.
over and over.
And I'm sure you have. You should have just had a T-shirt that said, "I don't know."
Well,
I know. Sorry.
I think we did by text, didn't we?
What?
Asked when it was going to be open, and you said Earth Day, and you responded Googling Earth Day now.
That's right. That's right. Oh man, we got to do some education on Earth Day.
we were hoping that we might be able to subtitle today's podcast, for we're so enjoying these pocket refuges that the children are building, gardens, wildflowers and vegetables at the schools. We were hoping we might be able to call this the Milkweed podcast.
Our milkweed is blooming. In all of the pocket refuges, the kids, and there's monarchs.
And they're very excited.
They get very excited.
The milkweed pod
Yes.
is such a wonderful part of that plant. And if I may, if we're rolling, if this is
absolutely.
I wanted to address the issue of Ding Darling National Wildlife being open in this regard. Ready? It's not right now, but it will be in the future.
Are you going to cause some?
Are you going to cause some
confusion?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. Gosh. So it's not yet, but someday soon we'll be able to say, "Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge is open." This message approved by Theodore Roosevelt.
Stand by.
Run that when it's ready. Stand by. Not open yet. Not open.
But until the refuge is open, Tony, I know there are other ways to support the refuge.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Thank you. Tarpon Bay Explorers. That is the only open part of the refuge right now. You can get out on the water. You can launch your kayak or stand-up paddleboard. You can go there and rent or go on a tour. So support Tarpon Bay Explorers. They've lost a lot. They've laid off a lot of people, and we want to get the business going. We want to provide that service. So you can always get out on the water with Tarpon Bay Explorers, and then, of course, shopdingdarling.com with the Friends Group. Supporting the Friends Group, of course, helps us.
Yes, we were in the refuge last week, and they had just gotten a new batch of the spoonbills in, the little teddy bears.
Yes.
They were so cute.
Yeah.
So I would
We were
definitely...
photographing one of the auction items for tonight.
Yes,
Oh, good.
yeah, the mangrove cuckoo.
And Laurie's
yes.
rustling through these little hand puppets and things like that. Through the closed store.
Right. And I noticed, Tony, tell us about the feather you have on today.
Oh, yes. So this is a Jim Sprinkle original. He gives them to people for certain things. I guess I earned it in my time here at Ding Darling.
And who's Jim Sprinkle?
Jim Sprinkle, world-renowned wood carver from Sanibel, and past president of the Society of the Friends Group, and a volunteer. You can come see him when the visitor center is open. He's a volunteer with all of his carvings inside of the visitor center. Such a supporter for conservation. But he does these wooden feathers, and that will be auctioned. One will be auctioned tonight. It's a mangrove cuckoo, and it has 4 diamonds on it, and it's beautiful. You become part of a club, a feather club.
Wow. And is that in conjunction with Congress Jewelers?
Yes.
That's what I thought. The feather was embellished, I think.
Yes, by them. Another supporter. So many supporters of conservation in the refuge. So the feather will go for auction tonight, and you'll be part of the Feather Club, and there's an annual gathering of the Feather Club members. I've never gone, even though I've had a feather. I'm excited to attend this year, but there are different themes, and whoever is once you get the feather, you're the head of the club, and you get to plan the gathering, and you work with the Ding Darling Wildlife Society to be a part of that gathering and
my
planning.
gosh.
Oh, that's cool.
I want to be in the
stuff.
Feather Club.
Uh-oh.
She's got
Guess
FOMO.
what?
She's got FOMO.
Something tells me if you come and win the bidding for the feather with the jewels, you'll probably be a member of the club as a result.
Yes.
And if you want to say a good look at Jim Sprinkle's work, there's a display up at the Wildlife Refuge Centre. He started off making duck decoys, and they were literally like blocks of wood with one head and a little neck. And then as the years went past, they've got a display showing all the years. And after about 4 or 5 years, he wasn't satisfied with that, and they became more and more realistic until they were Literally, they're
Art.
absolutely perfect.
Pieces of
Yeah,
art.
incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I think the same thing happened with Michelangelo. I've seen his finger painting. Made a lot of progress by the time he got to the Sistine Chapel.
Oh my goodness. Well, this has been
All right.
awesome.
On that note, thank you very much for joining us.
Bully for ding!
Bully for ding.
Bully for ding!
Bully
Doesn't
for
that feel
ding.
good?
Come on. Thanks very much for joining us, Tony. Thank you,
you.
Theodore Roosevelt. And
Roosevelt?
What? Teddy?
Steady. There you go.
For Teddy. Okay.
Quite
And
a
Laurie,
pleasure.
thank you. All right,
thank
guys,
you.
thanks for joining us. Come back and join us on the next one. And make sure you like and subscribe to be notified of upcoming podcasts. Thanks very much, guys.